Afternoon, everyone. So as Dom said, I'm David Kinnen. I am the computer science teacher at Thetford Academy. I'm also in charge of quality assurance and improvement for the whole of the Sixth Form. But I'm here to talk about what's the future in terms of education for computer science and software development, and the fact that the world is in a little bit of flux right now. And we also know, I know from work that I've done with yourselves over the years, the kind of the needs that industry has and kind of what is being turned out, what are schools, colleges, universities giving. And Neil and I are here to talk about the sorts of work that we are doing, but also how we can work with industry. Because I think the key thing here is that often schools can end up working in a silo. They can end up working and facing what the inspectorate wants or what government says or what the exam boards are asking for, and not really thinking about how do we prepare students to enter into industry. And therefore, that's what we're here for. Now, I'm going to start with some sort of laying out the landscape in terms of the bad news. So the bad news is that there are low numbers of students nationally studying specialist IT qualifications, and we'll look at that in more detail. There is a government obsession and focus on academic qualifications. So before students are 16, there is no qualification that the government allows schools to deliver that is a practical programming qualification. The GCSE is 100% exam driven. And right now, students do programming, but then they get examined in pseudocode. So 16-year-olds are examined on their ability to be good programmers, on their ability to write pseudocode in a 1.5-hour exam. Going forward, 16-year-olds will be asked to write real code on paper in an exam at 16. But, as we'll see, that is the bad news in a sense. But what industry says is we need people who can actually program. We need people who can solve problems. We need people who can do the practical stuff. And that's what, there's that disconnect there. And we can see a picture that I thought I just picked some data up and looked at last year's A-level entries. So we look at even at the academic A-level. Last year, academic A-level, there were 10,400 entries to A-level computer science across England. We're about the same ballpark as drama in terms of the number of students studying. However, we have 40,500 doing maths and 62,000 students doing A-level psychology. So we look at terms of the academic world, computer science is one of the smaller subjects overall. And when we switch to look at the specialist qualifications, which Neil and I do in our contexts, we can see that computing A-level is 10,400 students. Applied IT, which includes all the user-based IT, so how to use databases and spreadsheets, as well as programming, coding, and so forth, is 8,200. And the technical IT, which is where you get your programmers and your cybersecurity qualifications coming in, was 3,900 students last year across England. That has gone up. 2 years ago, it was 1,480. So the picture in terms of where we are at nationally is that we are doing mainly academic, but even then not that many academic stuff going on. So when we think about what do we mean by a specialist qualification, well, we've got specialist qualifications in IT and computing, but there is a low uptake. Some centres deliver it, most schools don't. You might have the odd you might have colleges that are delivering it, but how many of them are delivering ones which are focused on computing and programming, and how many are delivering stuff that is focused on user-based IT rather than the software industry focusing stuff? Then there is a new National Centre for Computing Education. Great, it's going to help It's going to bring about more teachers able to teach GCSE and A-level, which can only be a good thing. However, its focus is GCSE and A-level. So if you were doing GCSE, there's a great program out there to accelerate your ability to teach. If you're doing A-level, there's stuff coming on board. If you're doing a specialist qualification, you're basically on your own. The government doesn't give any extra support. But there is good news in terms of the future of specialist qualifications, and Neil will talk about that later in the talk, which is the Institute for Apprenticeships is supporting the new T-level qualification, which kind of goes live this September. And that is an exciting thing that if it goes well, it could completely change the standing of these qualifications nationally. But if anyone's been around long enough to remember GNVQs and the diploma, which have gone the way of the dodo, they were meant to be the next big thing in vocational education, the next big thing in specialist qualifications, and they died a death. So there's a real imperative here, because it may well be that the T-level becomes the only show in town that's not the A-level. So we're here to paint out where we're at, but also to try and bring forward where we might bring out about solutions that work for us here locally in Norfolk. And as the little side there, the government has decided that there can be no qualifications delivered, funded, pre-18 that don't contain a written exam. So those of you who may have remembered the old BTECs and Cambridge Technicals when everything was coursework based, as of this year, they will no longer exist. The current cohort in year 12 are the last cohort that could be recruited onto a coursework only qualification. Going forward, they will all have at least 40% written theory-based exam, some more than that. So that's a changing world. So specialist qualifications, T-levels, there are a few centres that have piloted them, but they go live from this September. Applied generals, content approved by universities and the DFE, and that's a key point about the applied generals, is that the content there is designed by universities. They are the consortia that's involved, and then there are the technical levels. Technical levels are not T-levels. You have to love it. And technical levels are kind of the building block to T-levels. The content for them was approved by industry, and that's the key difference. T-levels and technical levels are industry-led, so we're told, qualifications rather than university-led qualifications. A-levels are basically these days university entrance exams. That is what they are designed for. They are the content, their assessment models, they are designed by universities for universities. So we are here to talk about how we can work on that. But now for the good news. As I said, the National Centre for Computing Education is going to bring about more qualified and experienced computing teachers. T-levels and technicals designed by and for industry, fantastic, and there are local schools and colleges offering these qualifications. So there is good news there for us locally in the region. Now, what Neil will talk about in T-levels, and I'm going to mention to you briefly, is that what is a key part of the T-level and the wider technical thing are industry placements. The idea that students during their time in sixth form or college should spend a significant and substantial amount of time working in industry. Not work shadowing, actually proper industry-based work. And this is designed to address the fact that industry wants qualified entrants. They want people who can actually walk in the door and do stuff. I had a conversation with a local business, and they said, basically, we don't tend to take on university graduates because university graduates have maybe done 100 hours of coding in 3 years of a bachelor's of science degree. We want students that have done that much coding in 3 months. That's the kind of level of engagement we're looking for, and that's where the industry placement can serve that. And schools are providing specialist qualifications. So there is actually the potential here for synchronicity and joint working that can make a big difference locally for us all. But the challenge there is getting those industry placements to work, because it requires a significant commitment from industry. I think, Neil, correct me, it's about 35 days, is it? 315 hours of an industry placement. So you consider what work experience looks like. Work experience looked like 2 weeks of 35 hours a week. 315 hours is a significantly bigger investment. And we can do what we can in school. And so that's where we're at. So this is all about preparing students for career entry. So we can prepare students for career entry. That's what we as schools can do. Those forward-thinking schools like mine and like Neil's, and there's a few others around the country who are forward-thinking and industry-focused, we can do that because we are listening to what industry wants. But we need partners to help with those industry placements. But we recognize the challenges particularly smaller companies face in trying to do that. And industry wants young people that are practically competent. They don't want students that can pass exams. They want people who can actually program stuff and solve problems, work in teams, and all that. I don't know why that's quite so small. Sorry. So what we're looking for, that slide is incomplete. Never mind. As it says there, oh, that's because I've got 2 slides. Sorry. So what is the solution and the opportunity here? The solution and the opportunity is that schools are good at delivering the academic bit. So there's an academic bit of all these qualifications. That's what we can do. That's why we're teachers. We're good at delivering the academic stuff. And we can focus on the formal assessment stuff. So business doesn't have to, industry doesn't have to learn how to assess a student against an exam criteria. That's what we will do. That's what we are the specialists at. This is why we exist. And we're seeing a start of it here. The education sector over the last 20 years has become one defined by competition, not by cooperation. Schools wanting to pinch students from each other because we don't get funded unless we have a child or a student sat in front of us. But that will not work when we're looking at these qualifications where we need to work with industry. Because there's no point in me turning up to the door of Aviva and the Digital Foundry and saying, well, can you take 4 students? Great, we'll take 4. And then Thorpe turn up and go, can you take 4? And they go, no, because we can only take 4, and we're already taking them from Thetford, and that's them locked out. So we need that cooperation. And that's great that Neil and I are here together. What we also need to be thinking about is how do we share the burden throughout industry? How do we make sure that, and this is the start of a conversation today, how can we work with businesses and industry to share that burden? Because it's a lot of commitment. Some big companies will turn around and go, oh, well, we're too busy because we've got all of these demands from our clients. But we need to square that circle. We need to get that situation working where we can produce industry-ready people and do it in a way that works well for all of us. So I'm going to pass over to Neil, who's going to talk about what T-levels look like and what is going on at that side.
Thank you. So I'll just flick the PowerPoint over, just hold on one moment. And hopefully, it'll go back. Or not. There we go. So I'm Neil Tiddy. I'm from Thorpe St Andrews School and Sixth Form. And on the board at the moment on the screen, it's just showing you for a little animation about what the T-levels are. And as I go through, I'll tell you a bit more about what we do at Thorpe St Andrew, and also what the T-levels are, what they cover, just to kind of give you a bit of an idea for those of you that don't know, some of you might know a little bit, and obviously I'll try and answer questions at the end as well. So just in case you're wondering who Thorpe St Andrews Sixth Form are, we're the largest high school in Norfolk. We're one of the top 4 sixth forms and one of only 50 providers nationally that have been selected to deliver the T-levels as a pilot from September 2020. And currently, as a computing department, we deliver the A-level computer science, the special qualification in computing and IT. So obviously the T-levels is the largest qualification within our department that we've offered, so it brings quite exciting times. Would I watch a little video, which you may have already seen because it's a government advert for the T-levels. So as you can see, it's a fairly short video. They've advertised using that video and also like bus stop advertising, which you've probably seen over the past month, appearing on literally every bus stop it seems in Norwich. And also relying on individual establishments to obviously publish them and promote them within their area. So the T-levels are exciting new courses starting in September 2020. They're starting off with subjects of construction, childcare, and digital, and we'll talk about why as we go through as well. And these courses have been developed with industry. So initially, the Department for Education have worked with a group of industries to come up with the core content forum, which I'll tell you how you can get hold of as we go through as well. And then the exam boards have also worked with industries developing the specifications, which are still yet to be released, but will be before September, hopefully March time. So T-levels offer a mixture of classroom-based learning and on-the-job experience, so during that industry placement. And it plays an important part of the T-level qualification in the whole. And the idea is that the T-level will give them the knowledge and experience to open the doors so they could go potentially into further education still if they wanted, higher or degree apprenticeships, or straight into skilled employment if they wanted to as well. So why are they being introduced? So the government wants to try and simplify the current vocational education system. So they've recognised there's loads of different vocational qualifications, some of which all trying to offer the same thing, and they want to try and narrow it down so there's clear routes for students and it's quality education trying to rival what other countries are currently delivering. And they want to try and improve the UK's education to more put it in line. And the reason they've chosen the subjects they have for 2020, and obviously 2021 onwards as well, is to try and address the gaps in the industry at the moment. So particularly, obviously, digital, there's quite a skill gap, and they want to bring these T-levels in to hopefully try and introduce and bridge that skill gap and fill gaps as they go. The government's long idea is there will be 3 clear routes for education. So there'll be the students who want to go academic and follow the A-level route. There'll be the students who want to go straight into work and do the apprenticeship. And then in the middle, there'll be the T-levels, which have a mixture of the academic and the work side together. And that's where they kind of fit as you go. And you might be thinking, obviously, UCAS points in terms of universities. If they do a T-level, it's the equivalent of them doing 3 A-levels. So they will get exactly the same UCAS points if they did 3 A-levels. So if you see maybe people do the T-level, then decide to do a degree, they're getting the same grading as they go. Although their grading is made up of a mixture of A to C, the A-level style, and the distinction style to pass, the vocational style. So it combines the two as they go. And as already said to you, there is distinct routes which they want to take. So obviously there's the hope that they could go straight into employment. And as we talk more about the industry placement in this session, you'll see there's thoughts that actually the people that might go on placement with you, if you've got opportunities for them, they might be able to be employed straight with you that you've invested that time in through it. They could go and complete a higher degree apprenticeship, or they could go straight to university and continue just as they would maybe if they'd gone and done an A-level route there. So the T-level digital is going to be 3 strands of it. So there's going to be 3 different occupational strands. The first one being digital production and design and development, which is going to be software development in a sense, and that's the one they're piloting from 2020. And then in 2021, they'll be releasing another 2 strands, which are digital support services and digital business services. But obviously not every organisation will teach all 3 because they're by different exam boards. So the top one is with Pearson, and the bottom 2 are with NCFE. So they won't necessarily be able to transfer. It will be they need to pick the strand when they apply in a lot of cases. And the course structure is made up of 3 parts. So there's a set of core content that the government have come up with that it sits for all 3 T-levels. All 3 digital T-levels will have a core content. And if you're curious of knowing it in a bit more detail than what I'm going to share with you, if you Google like T-level core content, the Institute for Apprenticeships have that core content on there. And by like March time, they're hoping to release the specifications. So obviously you could look at it in more detail then from the exam board as well. There'll be an element of the specialist skills and knowledge. So they'll have a specialism at the end of their 2 years. In this case, for us, it will be digital production, design and development. And the final part, which is where hopefully you guys will be able to help us, is with the industrial placement. And that's what we're focused on a bit more later on as well. So what will students gain from choosing to do T-level digital? So they're going to gain industry relevant skills. So one of the things we've done as a school to help us prepare for this is we as a department have spent some time last year, once our year 11s and year 13s have gone, out in industry, gaining some skills in local business. So obviously thank you for them for letting us come out and kind of finding out what goes on in industry, making sure our skills are up to date. Because obviously we've been teaching, not necessarily in industry, so it's nice to see what goes on and kind of link those skills back to what we're teaching and obviously what's on this content as well. They're gaining an understanding of emerging issues and the impact of digital technologies, an understanding of legislation and regulatory requirements, an understanding of collaborative technologies, planning, implementation, testing and evaluation skills, an understanding of system security, and develop problem-solving skills, programming skills in more than one language. Pearson for 2020 are saying that one of those languages will be Python, but the other one is down to us to choose what we feel is obviously appropriate, and obviously through talking with industries that are offering placements, we'll decide, and obviously our skills as well, what would be appropriate for that to be and how it fits into the course. Also the understanding of the wider business context, so realising other aspects that go on. And obviously I know that's quite vague headings that I'm sharing with you, but if you want to know more, the more detailed outline content is available for you to look at as you wish. But you might be wondering, and I know David mentioned a bit to start with, what the industry placement is. And every T-level, whether it's digital, childcare, construction, will have that industry placement within it. And they'll be focused on developing their practical and technical skills. And they've got to spend at least 315 hours in that on placement throughout the duration of the course. So our thought at Thorpe is that students are spend 1 day a week on placement, and from talking to businesses, we know that sometimes that's difficult, particularly from a digital perspective, in terms of someone coming in 1 day a week. We're also looking to see if we can put windows of block placement of like a week into that course, but because of the nature of the T-levels, it's the equivalent of 3 A-levels. There's a lot of hours of teaching we've got to fit in as well. And obviously, as a school, we've got to be timetabled accordingly. So we can't randomly not do anything for a week, in a sense, because they're on placement. So it's working out the balance of the day a week and giving what the industry wants as their bits of block along the way, which we're currently working on seeing how we can fit them together. Students could spend the whole of their T-level on the same placement. And that might be because you as an employer want them and they want to stay as well. It could be that they want to stay. But at the same time, they could do it in 2 different placements. So they might do 1 placement for year 12, 1 for year 13. And again, that might be obviously your commitment as an industry, or it could be the student wants to go and try different things to keep their doors open. Students could either complete different tasks every time they come and see the industry, or they could be given a project that they work on, so they know that every time they're in, that's what they're doing. And again, obviously we can work with you if you would like a placement to decide how that best fits you as you go. And you might be thinking, like, but hang on, if I take a placement, isn't that to be loads for me to worry about? Because obviously it's a student and I understand that. The health and safety regulations of 1999 required employment basically to undertake a risk assessment before students start and provide an induction to the workplace. And the students obviously will be under the supervision and care of the employers while they're there. However, we're going to obviously support you in terms of that as well. So we've got, as a school, work experience coordinator who will make sure, and it comes later on as well, but I'll say it now, make sure obviously the necessary health and safety things are in place if you haven't offered placement students before. So the school will obviously support making sure everything's in place as it needs to. And also from a point of view of a contact, if there's any issues, we as a department would obviously liaise with you, come visit them while they're on placements, and if you've got concerns or questions, you can raise them with us as well. So we won't like go, there you go, there's the student, they're all your. We will communicate with you and work with you to make sure that placement's as successful for you as a business as if it is for the student as well, and coming out and seeing what they're doing, talking to yourself, seeing how they're getting on, addressing any concerns, seeing how we can make them even better for what they're doing. There is a legal requirement for you to have employer liability insurance, which I'm sure most of you probably have anyway, and most of these will cover work experience, although there are some exceptions to that as well. So what's in it for employers? So you might be thinking, well, hang on, I'm giving all this time to the student, but what am I going to get out of it? Because obviously at the end of the day, you're a business, you want to make money or develop your code or whatever it is you do, help people. It gives employers the chance to ensure young people are developing the skills, workplace behaviours and experience that the industry needs. So hopefully allowing you to have people there that have got the skills you want to obviously employ and take on later on. It provides extra resources for you, so particularly for projects, maybe bringing in new ideas, maybe developing existing employers, so allowing them to like mentor that person, develop them, and management skills. It aids the recruitment for entry-level jobs. So obviously, if you've got a placement student and you've got a job coming up and you like that placement student, you could offer them a job at the end of their course. They could potentially do paid holiday work if you wanted, but you don't have to pay them while they're on placement. They are free of charge to do that placement because it's part of their course. So it's giving you that extra time. Obviously, I know it will lose some time to spend to invest in them, but hopefully those benefits will outweigh the obviously costs to you as a business. And just to really emphasise the point that obviously the student doesn't have to do the same thing every single time, and particularly with it being like a day a week most of the time, it might be difficult for them to be part of a team, because with coding, obviously from one week to the next, it's to be such a change in what's happened. It may be difficult for them to do that. It could be that they do different tasks each week, or it could be they're given an individual product to work on to develop those skills. And you might be thinking that, how else can we help? So one of those things could be providing an industry placement. That would be a massive help to us. As a school, we're developing a T-level room that we want to resemble like what the workplace looks like for the students. So it could be that you provide us like a photo of what your office looks like so we can have ideas to kind of develop that room so it really feels like they're in the workplace when they're in school, and they can take the skills that we teach them out to help you guys in the placements, but more importantly, bring those skills that they're learning on those placements back and applying them to their studies they do. So it's very much their industry skills are coming into the classroom and what they're learning is coming back out as well. So it all kind of feeds in to each other. We're also planning a programme event later on this year to kind of help infuse pupils, obviously, to think about choosing the T-level route. And obviously, anyone who would like to help with that, obviously get in touch and let me know. We'd greatly appreciate it. Visiting speakers and workshops, obviously building those links with the employers, having them come in, talk. We've had some this year that have been really great. Kids have enjoyed it. And as a result, our option numbers have obviously increased as well, whether that's directly from that or other things as well. But they've really come back and they've been talking about it, chatting about it in lessons. So it's been really nice to see. Also, if you know other people that might be interested in finding out more about the T-levels, Obviously, share this information with them as you go. If you want to find out more, I've got some information leaflets that kind of tell you more about the T-levels, what involves in having a placement. Also, my contact details are behind me if you want to get in touch. And I'll happily talk to you, meet with you, discuss those T-level placements with you. But it'd be great to kind of work together to support the young people growing in programming and developing their digital skills. And then that's all from me. So I think me and David now will open it up to questions. If you've got any questions for either of us. Yeah.
It's obviously a bit early given that they haven't come out yet. Has there been any preliminary research to investigate the potential effect on our diversity?
I'm not sure, I'll be honest with you. Obviously, it's been developed by the government, and they've worked with industries to try and feel how they're going. So sorry, I can't really answer your question.
No. I think the key point, if you're talking about diversity, is that there is a real challenge across the board on that front, and I think it's reflected in every school and college across the country. If I look at my own centre, we've done lots of work trying to encourage diversity in terms of our recruitment in. And I'm currently, if I had been in school, I would have taught 3 hours of computer science a day, and I would have taught 2 girls out of a total of 90 students. And it's heartbreaking because actually we've done lots and lots of work. I've had some phenomenal girls in sort of year 7, 8, and 9 who were amazing programmers, amazing problem solvers, technically gifted, and then they went to go and do other subjects. And sadly, it ends up being that there is quite a strong gender divide still, where those girls are now doing humanities-based subjects. Nothing wrong with those subjects. I'm actually a theology graduate myself, a computer science teacher, but a theology graduate. So there is that real issue. But I think that issue is a societal issue at times rather than the nature of the qualification itself. But you are quite right. There is work to do with that. And the National Centre for Computing Education does have a mandate to try and address the gender diversity issue in particular on that front. Yes. Oh, sorry. There's two. Sorry. Yes. Good question. I think that there are. I think that there are also. It is also easy potentially for people to make assumptions about the identity of the people in front of you as well. That I have hidden. Well, I have other identities which I'm not presenting to you here because they weren't necessarily relevant parts of my identity to reveal on this occasion. But you're quite right that I think that the glory of the T-level, the being a triple, is a great opportunity. But I think we've got to try and keep that dynamic, as you said. I think that keeping keeping the involvement of the humanities and the social sciences alive as well, in terms of having the diversity of backgrounds. I think I reflect on the fact that I've very rarely met a computer science graduate here in this room. I've been to NorDevCon on multiple occasions, and I think there are some, but the majority of individuals seem to have come from diverse and disparate backgrounds into software engineering. But I think it's how do we I don't know what the answer is to how we address that at school level, because often those things are beyond the control of the computing departments, and there are decisions taken above us that restrict and constrain what we are required to do, because often we have no control over our curriculum. Our curricula are set for us, and we have a menu we can pick from, and that menu is at times quite restricted.
I think it's just going back to the original question. Although girls' numbers are still fairly low, there has been some increase, like I thought particularly at like GCSE. There's still nowhere near the same number as the boys, but there are more than there was like a few years ago. So it's going in the right direction, but I think it's going to take time to kind of get that message across that the girls, it's worth doing it, investing in it, and obviously that's why, particularly like with the visiting speakers, I think that allows them to see that actually it's more what the industry involves and engages them that way as well.
But I think we had over there first.
The government are putting in a lot of like money into the T-levels, and I think because they know that the reputation of diplomas, the GVQs, GNVQs, because they know they have such a bad reputation because they didn't work, I think they're pushed for it to try and make sure it does work. And obviously they're putting in the plan, obviously, for 2021, 2022. So they've got a whole fleet of T-levels. I think it's just under 30 of them that they want to have released. And I think having that now, the same government, that will obviously, because they're pushing behind the T-levels, that will hopefully help make them work as well. The Department for Education have worked with the universities in developing them, and that's where they've agreed that tariff. And obviously, because they're still, the specs haven't quite been released, obviously they haven't said what, but the interpretation is that they'll treat them the same as 3A levels.
I mean, I think there is a fair comment there potentially in terms of two particular universities, but we know that those two particular institutions have a particular view of what their students look like. But I think you find that in terms of I've known students go on to Russell Group universities and top 20 universities. Let's face it, not every top 20 universities in the Russell Group, and not every Russell Group university is in the top 20. I say that as a graduate of St Andrews, which currently outranks Oxford, thank you. But we know that the thing is, the universities will do what they do. They're autonomous institutions. We can but only encourage them. And on one level, if they don't want that, it's their loss. And if they are wanting students to go into industry, then they need to support the T-level. But we know that some universities have a very sharp focus on academic only focus. So those two universities really turn out academics who go and do academic stuff. They don't turn out individuals that go into industry often. So I think we've got that issue there on that front. Did you have a question for us? Neil, do you want to?
I'll let you go first.
Okay. I did some work with a colleague, Katie Van de Pierce Brown, who she's done some phenomenal work with her classes, and she's partly her identity might help, but equally she was even finding that her first few years, she thought, oh, I'm a female computer science teacher, surely girls will choose computer science. They didn't. And the work that she found was that it was what there was often was a tendency towards teaching in some subjects in IT and computing being about tinkering, giving it a go, experimenting, and that seemed to be bizarrely that kind of approach was disengaging, because it created a competitive environment where you had some boys rise to the top, other boys dropping out, and then the girls going, well, I don't want that kind of single-minded. I know I'm stereotyping to an extent, but you weren't getting that cooperative, collaborative, and you weren't getting that kind of the structured learning environment where it was clear, what do I need to do to be successful? It was go away and try and work out how to solve this problem. And I think that there is an issue there potentially in some of the pedagogy. However, I know that's not my pedagogy, but I'm still having that issue in terms of the schooling. But what I'd also say the issue is that I teach year 7. I don't teach year 8. I don't teach year 9. My school doesn't have a year 8 and year 9 computing curriculum. Why? Because there's one computer science teacher and one IT teacher, and the two of us have to cover everything between us. And what's been going on there is a bigger problem nationally, and it's called government funding. And it comes down to that when schools have a choice of, do I sack a computing teacher or do I sack an English teacher, it's the computing teacher that gets sacked. There used to be 3.5 of us. There are now 2. Why? Because when one left, it was, do we backfill the IT role or do we backfill an English role that's also left? And I think there's an issue there that's affected my school, and it affects other schools nationally. But the one thing is that the big O, the dreaded inspectorate, they have now become a friend to the smaller subjects because they are deep diving schools. So there are schools that have had their inspection grades downgraded for not teaching RE. They should be outstanding, but they were made good because their RE provision was rubbish. There was another school who their IT provision was criticised throughout the inspection report. So it may well be that for once, the big bad guys of education could in fact be the friends of some of the smaller subjects. Could. I'd say that could because this is only the first year of that new inspection framework.
I think as well, just going back to what you said, it's the number of choices they can make when it gets to like GCSE as well. So quite often when you talk to like the students, the computing would be one they picked if they had like one more choice they could make. So because obviously they only can do so many choices, they tend to be favouring other subjects for whatever reason than they are computing, which hopefully will change as they're picking up more of the skills, because obviously a lot of the computer science skills have now been starting to teach in Key Stage 3, so then that will hopefully ferry through. They're seeing what they're doing and trying to build on it and keep going as one of their options to go. And like David said, seeing that value of it will hopefully help that as well.
Yes, miss. In some schools, they are prohibited because of the nature of the GCSE qualification. The nature of the GCSE qualification, because it is exam-driven and exam-based, basically means that it effectively assesses your logical thinking skills in the same way that maths assesses your logical thinking skills. And so there are some schools that say, if you're not in the top 2 sets for maths, you cannot choose computing science. Now, my school doesn't do that. So I do have the full diversity of students who will probably walk out with a grade 1 in modern speak, a G in old speak, and some will walk out with a 9, which is A star in old speak. But there are schools that do actually say, if you're not in the top 2 sets, you're not doing it because there's no way you're going to get a 4, and therefore there's no point in you doing it. Whereas if you do history, you might get a 4, but you do computing and you won't get a 4. And the thing is that actually the statistics back that up, unfortunately. Ofqual's analysis shows that last year, of all the students that achieved a 4 in computing, only 123, of those that got a 3 in, of those that got a 4 in computing, only 123 did so with a grade 3 in maths. If they got less than a grade 3 in maths, they did not get a grade 4. Well, that's it. The thing is, there's a disconnect between pre-16 and post-16, because pre-16 is completely controlled by the DFE, post-16 is split between the Department for Business and the Department for Education. So the Institute for Apprenticeships, I think, is sponsored by the Department for Business, I think, isn't it? And it's not sponsored by the DFE. So you've got this bifurcation post-16, but pre-16, really, the GCSE is the only show in town because the government prohibits any technical qualification pre-16 in computer science because it's part of the EBAC.
And I think we'll have to stop it there because of time. But if you've got questions, you want to talk to us after or find out more about the T-levels, grab us. But thank you for listening.
Thank you to both of you. I suspect there's a lot more questions that could be had. We have a break, so these two can be mobbed, attacked, questioned. And then if you want to go find your room in the next 15 minutes for your next set of talks, and we will see you there.